Hello, I am Bookface, and today we've got an Ursine anecdote from the myths of the Yukagir people in present-day Siberia. Normally, I just want to talk about creatures from myth, but recently I've found some fun stories surrounding said creatures, like with my not-too-recent video on the Ebigan. And while this story doesn't get quite as random and crazy as all that stuff, it's something pretty strange. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. So, once upon a time, the Yukagir people suffered a massive plague, causing countless people to become ill or die. Now, since they didn't have vaccines or social distancing, they instead fell back on their shamans. But they couldn't stop it either. So one brave man decided to go down the river Kolyma to find help. But he found nothing, and eventually had to turn around empty-handed. I mean, well, at least you tried to... What exactly were you trying to do? Gonna get a second opinion from the other village's shamans? Some magic cure? A less sick village for you to live in? Well, whatever he was doing, by the time he started heading back home, winter was coming. And to avoid not looking like this guy at the end of The Shining, he had to look for shelter, and found what he assumed was an old bear den. He was quickly proven right on that assumption when he found the large female bear that was just chilling inside there. Luckily for him, the bear was a real chill host, providing food, being real nice, and fast forward a few months later, when spring came around, the bear gave birth to a man bear. I'm sure it was cold and pretty lonely, but did you do what I think you did with that completely normal bear? Moving past that questionable detail, for simplicity's sake, I've decided to give Man Bear a name since, Man Bear doesn't really roll off the tongue. So instead, I'm gonna call him Coke, for completely normal reasons. After things warmed up enough, Coke and his dad returned to the village from the beginning, which I guess isn't infected with plague now. They were met by his dad's wife and his other non-bear child. Well, that's awkward. Everyone greeted the man happily, though I'd imagine some marital discussions happened behind closed, chums. Coke, unfortunately, was kind of terrifying, so most people in the village just kind of avoided him, but his stepbrother was always down to wrestle with him, which is very brave, especially with some of the later information we get here. But I'm glad that he loves his brother bear. Eventually, though, the roughhousing gets boring, and so Coke decides to return home to the taiga. On his way out, though, he got invited to join a hunting party, and since he didn't feel like moving back in with Mama Bear, he decided why not join them. After a bit, things are going well with the hunting bros, but there becomes a bit of an issue. You see, every time the group went hunting, one person would hang back in the cottage because, well, I'm not exactly sure why, holding down the fort, but a new challenger approaches, and it's a bearded old man. The first hunter who's left behind naturally laughs out loud before the old man screams and decides to throw hands, or rather, throw a beard. Because when the hunter tried to kick him out, the old man wrapped this guy up with his weird sentient beard and jams the guy into a wall, and the hunter just kind of struggles until he straight up falls asleep. Now, this pattern kept repeating until all the hunters, except Coke, have been utterly spanked by this weird old man with the powers of Mustache from Ben 10. But eventually, Coke is the one that gets left behind, and in his sleep, he actually gets dragged out of the cottage by old man Grabbybeard. But he wastes no time overpowering the old man and tying to a tree by his own beard. However, because this old man is apparently a slasher killer, he's gone by the time the rest of the hunters show up. All that was left behind was his hog-tying facial hair still wrapped around the tree. This segment is not sponsored by Dollar Shave Club, but it really should be. Give me money. So they decided to follow this old man's random beard hairs and go kill him, I guess.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Eventually, they found a giant boulder blocking an underground tunnel, and Coke had to be the one to shove away and climb down, because these hunters suck.
You left, bro.
Eventually, Coke found a yurta with an old woman who was apparently Beardo's wife, who explains that his beard held all his power, and so when it got cut off, he died. Which is kind of weird considering he cut the beard off himself, but power move, I guess. So Coke decides to ask for directions from the recent widow with a grudge. Big shock. She gives him the wrong directions to get out of this place. But I guess he anticipated that, since he just does the opposite of everything she says.
Yes, so you take a right and, then you go down.
Right, down you say. Interesting.
So he kept going through the tunnels, finding a bunch of empty yurtas, until he reached the end where he heard singing. Now, since Coke loves old Disney movies, he opened the yurta and found a beautiful woman sitting there, apparently looking like she was expecting him.
Yes, at 5 p.m. I have my meeting with the bear-human hybrid that killed an old man. Better start singing.
So he told her that the old lady sent him there, we'll call that a half-truth, and that he was sent to marry her. Nah, I don't think that's what the old lady was going for. But not questioning this at all, and also probably thinking Coke looks pretty fine, she accepts the weird kind of proposal. So they get back to the entrance to the cave, somehow, where the rest of the hunting group is waiting at the entrance, placing bets on whether or not Coke is dead. Unfortunately, Coke decides to push the pretty tunnel lady out first, but as soon as she sticks her head out, these dudes snatch her up and push Coke back into the hole. So the group bickers and fights, possibly to the death, over marrying rights, while Tunnel Lady probably just sat aside awkwardly, I guess.
But none of them are bears.
In the end, there were two left who couldn't beat each other, so they decided to start a show on TLC called Two Hunters, One Wife. Oh no. And so they share the tunnel woman that they kidnapped and stole from their friend who they left to die. Real cool, guys, real cool. Sure you'll have a wonderful marriage. Meanwhile, back in the Coke tunnel, so Coke, who suddenly can't push away the rock door for some reason, decided to just start wandering underground. Now, I'd call this a bad strategy, but it ends up working out real well when he hears a bird. After following, finds an even prettier lady with a white eagle next to her. And before Coke can say anything, she pulls an Uno reverse card and says,
I'll show you the way out, but only if you get me a husband.
And, okay, this is actually where I got confused, because I'm gonna be honest here. I thought because of phrasing and just the fact that this is kind of very stiffly written in my source, I thought Coke bailed on his first wife and just decided to upgrade with the new lady. Turns out it's kind of hard to tell apart two sudden wife characters when they're both referred to as girl. We'll call the first one Nita, and the second one is Birdie. Look, I'm not great with names. I'm barely passable when it comes to references. So Coke agrees to be Birdie's wingman, and then uses her magical eagle to fly out of the tunnel somehow. It's magic, don't question it. Once he reached the surface, he booked it back to the cabin, where the reality show hasn't even aired its pilot episode, and yet it still ends up cancelled. Because Coke grabs both remaining hunters by the head, and just smashes them together.
I'll give the golden chainsaw for coolest kill to
These stupid hunter guys.
dude's head blew up.
Uncool thing, he turns to Nita and says,
No, you're my wife. Better not leave me or this will happen to you.
which is more than a little concerning, but she laughs it off, so maybe the humor just doesn't translate. Or maybe the Yukagir had some real tough jokes. They both get on the eagle and pick up Birdie, and then all three of them fly back to the village. He doesn't stay long, though, after saying,
You bro got your wife. Found her in the tunnel. She likes birds. Good luck.
nah, he just head back out to the taiga with his wife, where they spend the rest of their days. Some say you can still see Coke, either the original or one of his descendants. I choose to believe the latter, because I like to think that this vaguely mystical, kind of confusing couple lived out their days happily, and had a lot of man-bear babies. And thus ends our story, with a little bit of lion, fair amount of taiga, and a whole lot of man-bear. Oh my. Of course, I have to end this video on the stupidest joke I could come up with. If you like this video and want to support what I do, I have a Patreon where you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. And occasionally you'll be able to vote for what video I do next. On top of the fact that I would just really appreciate it. I hope to find more weird myth stories like this that aren't just the basic retelling of Hercules. But that's for another day. Bye.